But first, we have some breaking news on the sentencing underway in Western Australia today for the Claremont Killer. I want to bring in Sky News host Ashley Gillen. Good afternoon to you, Ashley. What is the latest?
Julie, thank you. We have just learned that Bradley Robert Edwards has been given 2 life sentences for the murders of Jane Rimmer and Ciara Glennon. He must serve a minimum of 40 years in jail. We know that Bradley Robert Edwards is 52 years old. That would mean that he was 92 by the time we get to any possible release from jail. We're going to bring you some immediate reaction to what's been going on today at that sentencing hearing in the Supreme Court of WA. Joining us live is Sky News contributor Jane Marwick and investigative reporter Steve Pennells. Good to see you both. Appreciate your time. Jane, justice done today in Western Australia?
Yeah, I think so, Ash, although we've been following it very, very closely to see, and the judge did talk about what it would mean if you had never to be released. I don't think I'd like to see a 92-year-old Bradley Robert Edwards have any hope of freedom. I think the most powerful things today were those victim impact statements that we heard from his victims today in the court. One woman saying, by the time I was in his vehicle, I was picturing my own gravesite, and the other woman talking about how she can't be hugged, she can't hug her children, she can't hug her husband. These victim impact statements have been extremely powerful and have made for very, very upsetting listening. But these women did say that they did this for their families, and one woman said that they had referred to him as a monster in her family. She said, but he's not a monster, Ashley. Indeed, he's just a coward.
Our reporter Emily Evans has been sitting through this sentencing today. She's going to be joining us live in a moment, but she has just messaged to say that this sentence was met by applause inside the courtroom. Steve, Justice Hall, Emily says, said to Bradley Edwards, of the women he murdered, he said, you not only robbed them of their lives, but their hopes, their dreams of others for them. He noted that Bradley Edwards has refused to participate in a psychiatric report, that he's shown no remorse over this entire period and the very long trial. He noted that he's a stoic, a controlled person, calm, unemotional, remorseless. We'll wait and find out if there was any reaction from Bradley Edwards himself to that sentencing. But when you look at how this sentencing played out today, there was a debate about how these crimes undermined community safety, the impact on the community, and how that should be taken into account as well in terms of the sentencing today. The defence argued that it accepted the impact the deaths had on the victims and their families, but didn't accept the impact on the wider community. The prosecution said that that needed to be a consideration in determining sentencing. There's this debate as to whether the community in Perth was essentially another victim, because this is a man who terrorised and traumatised Perth through his actions.
I mean, it's a tough one, because this is a case that's gripped WA like no other case, and I think a sign of that was this morning at court. I understand at 4:30 a.m. there were people queuing up, members of the public, and some of them hadn't even been born when the murders happened. I mean, this is embedded into the DNA of Perth, and I can't help but think that, yeah, he's probably going to die behind bars, but I don't think any sentence would have satisfied the public. It became a much bigger case that everyone was invested in. But I just can't, these are my initial reactions, but I just can't help but think that the families would have had a bit more peace if it was never to be released. And of course, the family of Ciara Spears, who have had kind of no insight into what happened to their daughter, nothing's clearer. And from all signs so far, Edwards is never going to admit to killing any of the girls, and won't admit to revealing, or won't say where her body is. So it's one of those things where it's the end. It's a decision the community's been waiting for I mean, some of these victims for more than 30 years. But there's this feeling now that it's just, you know, it's just not enough. But I don't think anything will be enough, really.
Jane, we were just talking a lot there, and the focus has really been on the girls who were murdered. But today the sentencing was for 7 offences. We've seen the 2 murders of Jane Rimmer and Ciara Glennon. Obviously, as Steve alluded to there, Ciara Spears, her body has never been found, and he has been found not guilty of that murder. But there's also these prior offences, including break and enter, deprivation of liberty, aggravated sexual penetration. And the prosecution, in its arguments ahead of this sentencing today, really argued that because he led this ordinary life while carrying out these heinous crimes, because of how remorseless he has been, how efficient he's been in these abductions of vulnerable women, it does show that he is a very dangerous person that should not be let out into the community.
Yeah, Ashley, I'll be interested to see the public's reaction. We're all just reacting to this as the news comes into us. But the judge did say that this man led an ordinary life while his offending was escalating, and he used the word dissimulate, which means being able to disguise your thoughts and feelings, his ability to carry on as normal. And that is the thing I think that shocked people who knew him, a seemingly unremarkable man capable of such heinous crimes.